And must I always begin with a regret that I have left my gun behind? I've said so many times that if a gentleman introduced me with compliments and then sat down, I'd use a gun. But as I haven't the gun, I'll just give the chairman a dose of his own medicine. It is my privilege to compliment him in return. I ask you to look at him. Gentlemen, you behold before you an old man. His features would deceive you. On these features are the marks of unimaginable crimes. And yet, the features belie themselves. Instead of having led a life of crime, as his face indicates, he began in a Sunday school, and will end there. He has always led an exemplary life. One of those lives that make you think of all the long words in the vocabulary that suggest virtue. Virtue which he appears to have but has not. His public history has been merely a deception, milestoned every now and then by misdemeanors. But these misdemeanors were only the effervescences of a great nature, the accidents of a great career. He really has all the virtues known, and he practices them secretly. Gentlemen, you know him too well for me to further prolong this introduction. I rise this time without invitation in order to defend myself. Yes, and there are others here older than I who need it more. What I was going to say was this: I don't mind slanders and that sort of thing. The facts are what I object to. I don't want anybody to know my true history, and I appeal to you journalists to keep it from getting abroad. When you live as long as I have, you'll find out that the world knows you much more favorably than you know yourself. I tell you, when you wake up in the morning feeling bad and thinking yourself a pretty low-down kind of a creature, it is not on account of what the world thinks or the slanders of other people, but on account of some infamous deed you have committed and which nobody but yourself knows anything about. Now, the things that those Westerners said about me were all slanders. There was no truth in them. The true things that I did in that region they didn't know, so they couldn't tell them. If they could, they would have put me in a hole. I have not been an alleged humorist. I have been a wise man, a Solomon. I have kept secret the things I have done, but it is no wonder that those people told slanderous tales about me. I would have done the same thing for another man. Mr. Clark is right in saying that the foundation of humor is seriousness, gravity. Contrast is what brings out humor. To show you that this is true, I will tell you how I came to draw that very map of Paris which he spoke about. It was in 1870 or 1871, I think. In my home was a very sick friend of ours. For days and nights my wife and I sat up and worried. What made the strain worse was the fact that we did not know where to locate the family of our sick friend. In vain we made inquiries to discover what was their post office so that we might reach them by wire. It was no use, and the strain continued for 3 long weeks. At the end of that time I was completely worn out, exhausted. miserable. Then came the reaction. I sat down and took a big M and made that map of Paris. But when I went to print the map, it was upside down. I had forgotten that the cut of a map had to be made reversely in order to have the map look right on paper. The thing that I printed didn't look any more like Paris than like New York. It was a sight to behold, but it was published nevertheless, and some people said it was very humorous. Under it, I placed a dozen explanatory notes, but they didn't explain. Then I attached some more notes without improving the value of the map as a map, but folks said it was funny. Some American students in Berlin took it from one beer mill to another and laughed over it. Then some native Germans got hold of it and talked excited German about it. These Germans saw nothing funny in it, and there was humor in that very fact. Now, you can see how a very sad experience resulted in arousing my humor. For if it hadn't been for that sick friend of ours, I would never have drawn the map of Paris. I want to say good night. Times have changed, you know. I'm old, I'm reformed, too. I am just as competent to run all night as I ever was, and more competent to discuss Scotch whiskey when it is good. And I see many before me who can do that. But when one becomes respectable, one must go home early. It is to protect my reputation that I am going. The last time I was with you, I was like the rest of you, not respectable. All the slanders that were poured upon me tonight, I know, were pure artificialities. The compliments paid me were the only things that had the imprint of truth. I shall take the compliments home and forget the slanders. I have one thing to say before I go. Of all these slanders, there is only one that rankles, and it is not a slander on me, but on the man that said it. He said he had never read my books. Now that hurts. Really, I can't understand it. He seems so intelligent. So intelligent. But how could he be so under the circumstances? If he hasn't read those books, his intelligence must be artificial. Mr. Keller has read them, and he simply oozes intelligence. He is brimming over with it. I bid you good night, and thank you very much.